Welcome to the Inner Voice Podcast with the Conscious Living Coach. Join your host Jennifer Mackenzie and guests as they delve deep into the mind, spiritual practices, and holistic well-being. What does your inner voice say to you?
Hello and welcome to another episode of That Inner Voice Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Mackenzie, the Conscious Living Coach, owner of Lunar Spirit Wellbeing. And today I'm joined by 𝐀𝐞 Hoyle of 𝐀𝐞 𝐈𝐧𝐬 Hypnotherapy. And 𝐀𝐞 works with specialising in teenage mental health, supporting the teenagers of the world. And it's much needed right now. So welcome, 𝐀𝐞.
Oh, thank you very much for having me here.
You're welcome. And how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well on this cold, crisp, lovely day, actually.
Yes, it's rather cold and windy, isn't it, at the moment? Hopefully, it's not going to get too much colder. So, just tell the watchers and listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, and I specialise in helping teenagers and their parents, actually, when teenagers are suffering, mostly with like anxiety, low mood is what I deal with. But I've just found it's an incredibly effective way of quickly enabling them to change the way they feel about themselves, which is fundamentally what this is all about.
Absolutely. And this is much needed work. Teenagers are struggling more than ever, I feel, with the effects of the pandemic, with the struggles of things like social media these days, and the pressures on them to be and look and feel a certain way. So, what are your views on kind of what's happening right now in the world?
Well, I wouldn't want to be a teenager right now, would you? I mean, I think it's just a really tough place. And I think with the pandemic, the sad thing is, I think the kids have been kind of like the forgotten ones. Everyone's like, oh, they're really resilient and they'll be fine. And I think we've got some hindsight to work from, but their world's been turned upside down. Their education's been turned upside down, how they interact with people. And there's this low-lying fear everywhere. And I think it's really damaging, and I am actually getting seriously worried now about the seriousness of the mental health issues I'm hearing about. We knew it was a growing trend anyway, but since the pandemic, it really has got very serious. And services are so stretched. People are waiting. When we were going through this with our daughter, it was like an 18-month wait. Now, in some parts of the country, it's 2 to 3 years, which is just not a service. It's not fit for purpose. You can't wait that long. I mean, you don't know how you're going to get through the next 18 hours, let alone 18 months plus.
2 years, 18 months to get seen by a mental health professional. I mean, I've been through the mental health service myself a lot and feel completely let down by it. I was passed from one person to another. Nobody knew what I was doing. And when I was a teenager, I actually tried to commit suicide. I was a self-harmer as well. And, it never got discussed. There was never support. It was just like, right, you can go home now and, just carry on with your life. There's absolutely no support. I mean, you can't blame the people working in the service. That's not what.
No, I mean, I think they're dedicated. They're doing the best they can. It's just the service is not available. And the thing is, even to get referred now, the barrier's gone up. So now you have to be, self-harming, suicidal ideation to even get a referral, and then that puts you into the waiting list. So there's thousands of kids that need to be caught before that level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're the ones that I really worry about, because they're slipping through the net. There needs to be another service for them. And also, we all know the sooner you get to them, the more effective and the quicker the work can be to turn this around. And I think one of the reasons I love working with young people is you can just let them get on with their lives. Like I have clients in their 50s, 60s, and you kind of think, oh, if only you dealt with this years ago. Whereas if you deal with a youngster, they're like, oh, okay. And you go, right, go live your life. You know,
It's
don't
just
let
the
this
brains under
hold
it,
you back.
you know, it's like sponges still. It's
Yeah.
so much harder to, when I coach, it's so much harder to break through the barriers working with older women than it is with the younger generation that we work with, because of the neuroplasticity, isn't it? That you can pick up new habits, and you can get into their psyche a lot easier. And like by the time we get to 35, our core beliefs and our habits are pretty ingrained into us.
Mm.
Yeah, I do agree with you. It's and it's also, do you find it really rewarding when you
Oh my
work with
goodness.
somebody and then like you see them, those big changes in them?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's just miraculous. I'm so lucky to do what I do. You just want to reach more people. But
Mm,
yeah, I mean, they come in and bless them in such a state, and you know, everything's dramatic at that age, isn't it? And it's the end of the world, and it's always going to be like this. And
mm,
when they realize that they have the power to change things themselves, and it's down to how they think about themselves,
mm.
and you see them, you know, get that bit of optimism and then confidence, and then they go on and achieve things that they never thought they could achieve. It's just
Yeah,
magical.
there's no better feeling, really, is
No,
there?
no, none at all.
No.
None at all.
Well, you know, we talked a little bit about the pressures of the pandemic, but
Mm,
there was bigger things than that before the pandemic even hit. The things like the birth of social media
mm,
has a lot to answer for. And young influential minds, and the sort of content that they're exposed to and that they're watching, they're following these influencers and these models that, you know, they're not even real people because they've had so much work done, and you know, and their images are all um filtered or they're photoshopped. I'm not saying all people, but you know, a lot of them are.
mm.
And it just gives them a real false sense of what life is, and
Oh, yeah.
what people look like,
Mm.
you know?
And the thing is, like, they know on a logical level, they know that these are just snapshots, right? But everything in our lives is down to the images we create and the words we tell ourselves.
Hmm.
And they are bombarded with so many of these images. I mean, if you see a youngster scrolling, I mean, it's just so fast. They seem to need to be bombarded. They're stimulated. They're doing three things at once. So they've just got this stuff coming at them from all angles all the time. And so that's the images their brains are being filled with. And of course, it's like, well, I don't match up with that. No one can ever match up. We do the same thing. We don't post on social media when we're having a really shit day. We post on media when we've got something to celebrate, or you know, something's funny's happened, or you know, or we look good because we're going out and we spent ages doing our makeup, you know, whatever it is. And so they just get this false impression of the world, and that they are very different and they don't look like that and they don't have that life, and so therefore they are less than.
Hmm.
And that's when the self-esteem starts to get knocked. And also, I mean, I was having this conversation with someone the other day, like back in our day, you had an argument at the school, and you at the most you speak to your best friend, and you know, maybe speak to another person, and if you could resolve it, you'd speak to the person you had the argument with. Now something happens at school or college, and about 50 people weighed in with their opinion,
Yep.
which is never a mild opinion, it's always a very strong opinion. And I kind of think you can never get away from it. There's just no downtime.
Mhm. I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's not just about like those images that they're seeing. It's about it, social media and bullying,
Mm,
and being, yeah, not being able to go home and leave it behind at school,
mm,
and having that constant, and then people creating false accounts to then carry on having a go at you. So it's not even a case of them blocking it and trying to get away from it. Is that then several of them would then create false accounts and carry on the abuse, the ridicule, or or there's people videoing you without your consent and uploading it onto social media for everybody to laugh at you. Is those sorts of things. I'm so glad people didn't have video cameras in my day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and also there's this, how has it become acceptable that you can say the most awful things, the most hateful things, the things I've come across that just break my heart, because you wouldn't say that to someone's face.
No, if you see
they hide behind it.
Video about that, the bullying, like cyberbullying, have you seen it where they stage it with actors and they actually go up to somebody and say the things that have been said over, hid behind a keyboard, and it gives a completely different feel to it, and you think, oh my God, but what gives people the right to sit behind a keyboard and say those things?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, it's beyond hurtful. It's really scary, and I, we cannot continue like this. We cannot continue where even, young women get to the point where they feel that there is no way out. And it's having the most devastating consequences that, so that's something we have to, I think we have to do it on two levels. We have to get a lot stricter. The social media companies have to get on board, and they have to start dealing with accounts and tracking people and having accountability. And we need to make the young people a lot more resilient. I think it's a two-pronged approach.
So when you say make young people more resilient, you so I'm big on emotional resilience, absolutely, because it's not about suppressing emotions at all.
Never.
It's about owning them, but not letting emotions control or govern how you're reacting. So
for me,
do you mean that equip them better to cope with these situations, or what?
Yeah, because for me, the fundamental thing for anybody actually is just, it's nice to get to them at a young age, is self-esteem. It's how we fundamentally feel about ourselves, because confidence can be faked. Confidence is what we show the rest of the world, and we know that young girls in particular are very good at masking. But self-esteem is how you fundamentally feel in here about you. And if you can sort that out, you can pretty much cope with whatever is going on around you. So if we take bullying, for example, kids will say, yeah, I'm bullied because I've got red hair, or, my ears are weird, or whatever it is. And the privilege I've had using hypnosis is that I've been able to work with older people who have gone back to younger scenes in their childhood, but now have the language to express how they were feeling. And what I've learned through working with my clients about bullying is, it's never the thing you're being bullied about. It doesn't matter what that is, because everyone can find something about everybody. It's how you felt about yourself, because the bullies will go for the weak targets. So they spot somebody with low self-esteem a mile off. And so all a bully is doing is saying, I don't feel very good about myself. So the only way I can feel better about myself is to put you down, because that raises me up. And they'll just go for the easy target. So the more you can bolster someone's self-esteem and make them feel good about the way they behave, the way they think, the way they look, that's the resilience, because then you don't let this noise in.
And if we do that as well, theoretically, there should be less bullying, because the bullies will feel better about themselves and won't feel the need to project and ridicule other people because of their internal.
A bully never feels good about themselves.
Of course not. No, it's all projection. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I had to learn. And it was like, well, there's actually nothing wrong with me. I feel sorry for you because you feel that hurt inside that you need to help other people. And once you kind of have that realization, it changes, and you can pass that on to these young people. And it's like, actually, they are projecting onto you. But so theoretically, if we teach children in primary school about self-esteem, we should theoretically have a nicer world. Less bullies, and less people feeling crappy about
Yeah, I mean,
themselves.
it's such a shame, isn't it, that schools do an amazing job, but unfortunately, kids are not really learning the essentials of life, are they?
No, but it
You
starts at
know,
home.
yeah, it
It's
does
not
start at home, but then at home is
as
often a cause
well.
of the problem.
But yeah, so it starts at home,
Mm,
and in school.
mm.
So, but then if the parents still are carrying their own wounds and don't have any other information, it's not their fault.
Yeah,
That they're just passing on what they think is normal. So
of
it's a
course.
generational thing.
Yeah.
And if we can then stop it with this generation
Mm.
and stop the passing on of that generational trauma and that hurt,
Yeah.
um, then that's where I'm at. I'm at, like, getting people to break that generational
Mm.
cycle.
Mm.
Educate, and you say you educate parents as well, because that's you you can educate the child and help support the child, but ultimately it does start at home as well, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
how.
because you can work with a child, but if the child's going back into the same environment,
Mm,
that's difficult. If the environment doesn't change, that you can make the child, you can, especially with the older kids, you can make them realize that, like, this isn't forever, and they can have coping strategies, but you also need to work with the parents, and also you need to work with the parents who are desperate to help their kids and do the right thing and are at a complete loss, because that was me.
mm,
That's why I'm so keen on working with parents, because when our daughter had serious mental health issues, nobody equipped me with how to
mm.
help her.
Yeah, that's
And,
really important.
so she would go to these CAMS appointments, and she'd go in, and if I did ever get involved in the conversation, sometimes it was clear that she was saying things that weren't, they might have seemed like her reality at the time, but they weren't the reality.
Right.
And then she'd come out, and all they wanted to talk to me about was the next appointment. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. I'm the primary caregiver now for the next 7 days. What am I supposed to do to help
Right.
her? And if
Mm,
nobody helps you to do that, you don't know you've done the wrong thing till you've done it. And then,
mhm,
think, oh, well, that wasn't the right thing to say, or that wasn't the right thing to do.
mm,
And I don't want anyone else to feel that helpless and lonely.
mm, mm. So what is your advice then for somebody who has a child, a young person going through mental health difficulties? What's your advice on what they can do to help their child in the home at home?
I think the biggest breakthrough for me was when I started seeing life through my daughter's eyes.
Mm,
So I was being mum, and I was doing what was right. And I was trying to get her to school because she was supposed to be in school. And I was trying to get her to go outside and get some fresh air and do some exercise, or.
yeah.
And I was trying to do what other people said I should do. And when I cut out all that noise, and when I started really concentrating on what does she need right now, things got a lot easier,
Mm,
because I wasn't piling on the pressure about school.
mm,
So I would really trust your instincts,
mm.
talk to your child. I mean, most of the time they don't know what's going on either.
Yeah.
So they find it very hard to vocalize, but
Mm,
try and see what's going on. So I'll give you a classic example. So I was always left hanging around. She had social anxiety, so she couldn't use public transport. So I always had to drop her off, pick her up, which I'd do because I knew that being interactive was important.
mm,
And I'd be hanging around, and then her makeup was all wrong, so she'd have to do that again, and then something else would go wrong, and I was trying to work, or whatever,
mhm,
getting more and more frustrated. But then when I realized that that was just because she was desperate to go out, but was finding it too scary, these were just delaying tactics. So
right.
when you start to get on their wavelength, and what I'd say was, don't just look at the behavior, ask why. So if they're behaving in a certain way, of course we react to it because it can be frustrating and annoying and all the rest of it. But ask yourself, why are they behaving like that? And then that starts you entering a little bit into their world. And you have to step into their world in order to help them.
Mm,
So I'd say if you're going to start anywhere, start there.
mhm,
Um, and they back praise. They'll go, oh, you're only just saying that because you're my mum. But they do hear it. Praise them at every given opportunity, but make sure you're praising their attributes, not the way they look, because that's a whole other issue. And I found myself, I'd say things like, oh, you look, you look gorgeous, you look wonderful, which is fine to do that, as long as you also are starting to say, I really like the way you stood up for your friend, or, I'm so impressed the way you articulate this, or and don't say, oh yeah, your friend, she's so pretty, So about them, about their attributes, the person they're becoming, because they're so full of self-doubt.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Anything you can do to help that is a really good start. And
it's really important that you brought that up, because often with girls especially, we find ourselves as mum, oh, you look so pretty, what you're wearing, you look amazing, look. So what we're doing is we're reinforcing the fact that they're getting praised for how they look on the outside, rather than actually their character. So yeah, that when I started and I'm NLP trained, so that is all about language, isn't it? And and I was like, oh my god, light bulb moments of the language that we're using.
So important.
So important. Just changing the narrative and switching around the words a little bit when we're talking to ourselves. The podcast is called That Inner Voice, and it's all about what goes on up here, and it's about mental health, but it's also about positive recovery as well from lots of things. But that narrative and that internal voice, and then how we're talking to ourselves and others. And even if you just have the same sentence, but you just change one word, it has a completely different energy. But words are energy.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm big on, I'm an energy healer and a spiritual teacher. So that words carry energy. And what we're saying is what then we start to think and believe, and what we bring into our reality. And so do you ever repeat back like what your kids say or what your clients say, and they look at you as like, what? So that's what you just said.
All the time. I mean, I had the analogies that people use without realizing are huge, and you have to go, oh, so you just said that, just like, and they went, And something else I do with the teenagers, I give them a piece of paper and I go and a pen, and I say, write down all the things you say to yourself, all those mean things, all those critical things that you think about yourself, how you feel right now. And they like, right. And I go, okay, say that to me. And they go, oh, no, I can't. I say, well, why can't you? They go, oh, it's too mean. I said, well, why are you saying it to yourself?
Exactly that. Exactly.
And they are like, oh, and they start to get it. And then I always advise everybody, be your own best friend. Because your best friend wouldn't talk to you the way you talk to yourself, and you wouldn't talk to your best friend the way you talk to yourself. So be that own best friend, and they need to learn that. They need to learn to be kind to themselves, because they're so harsh to themselves all the time.
And lots of teenagers at the moment, they're doing their mocks, aren't they, at the moment? Lots of exam pressure right now as well.
The pressure is just crazy. And they also, these poor kids, they kind of like, you have to remember that all their life has been judged by academic success, and they have to pass these exams, and you have to sometimes help them stand back a bit from that and go, do you know what, life is about so much more than this, and I will still love you whether you pass these exams or not. And that's the other thing about praise. Don't note equally, as we just say, don't just praise looks, don't just praise exam success and academic success either, because that gets into the trap. They're your future people pleasers and perfectionists, because like, if I get this really, really good, and if I get really good marks, they'll love me. And then that's a dangerous route as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I really do feel for the younger generation today. And I was watching Dr. Alex George, and he's doing loads of work at the moment with young minds and young people. And yeah, I'd love him to come on here.
Yeah.
Of
I think
us.
everyone would like to talk to Dr. Alex George. Yeah,
I know.
he's
No,
doing
he's
some great work. He
yeah,
really is.
and so influencers like that are so good,
Mm.
like for younger generation to follow. And he's just started a movement as well, called Post Your Pill, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Which is all about
Which
this
is
thing.
very brave of him to do because of his medical background. There's lots of, I've worked with some young doctors and they're put under so much pressure to not be fallible and to have be the ones with all the answers, and
Yeah.
they're all sorted. And there's a few young doctors now I'm so impressed with that they're actually
Refreshing,
opening up.
really.
They're opening up about eating issues and depression and their own struggles, and I just think that makes them just more relatable. You're more likely to go to somebody who you know really understands what you're going through. But yeah, I think they're wonderful.
Yeah. It's refreshing, I think, to
Yeah.
see now there are so many people, celebrities with that following that are using their platforms for good.
Yes.
And to get into the minds of our younger generation, and just like how it's all having a human experience, isn't it? Like we're forever trying to like be perfect or run away from these normal human emotions and experiences that we just try and suppress them so much. And it's like we're all humans, and we all go through these things, and nobody's like this perfect person. Perfection doesn't really exist. It's just it's all part of the human experience. Depression, anxiety are all normal human reactions, and it's just like how you deal with that. And it's not a forever thing, is it? It's a part of life, I feel.
And I think that's partly the thing about social media. We kind of have this notion that we should always be happy. Well, that's unrealistic and it's not possible, because if you were always happy, you wouldn't really know what happiness was, because you wouldn't reach the heights of happiness.
You'd just be like on a level.
We're almost scared of the feelings. Like even anxiety, sometimes you have to sit with that. Sadness, you have to sit with it. Every feeling is valid, every emotion is valid, and you have to sometimes just accept it and ride it out,
But we
and
want to
not
label them
always.
good or bad, don't we? We want to label everything and label it negative, positive, good, bad, happy, sad. What it just everything is just what it is. It's normal to feel rage sometimes, to feel jealousy, to feel upset, to feel sadness, and to feel sad without a kind of real reason. It's just I'm having a meh day, and just get on with it. It's a normal part of life for me.
Yeah.
And like those having to label things, and that you get into the realms of toxic positivity, don't you? And it's like it's not normal to be happy all the time.
It's not life, is it? So
no, it's not part of our human experience. And grief is a normal part of life, loss and you losing people, and we're so scared of it all and scared of talking about it, so we want to run away from it all.
And also, I think people they so want a quick fix. So like people will say, oh, I can't deal with this grief and this sadness, and you have to say, well, it's a natural process and it takes time. You only need to really worry about it if it's past a year and it's really impacting your life. But other than that, you have to feel that to process it.
Exactly. Yeah. And healing happens by feeling it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's by bringing your awareness to like identifying the feeling and naming the emotion that you're feeling, and then exploring a little bit more about the underlying reasons and why, and then you can start to understand.
Understanding is everything. That's the work I do, because it's all about going to the root cause. Because if you don't find the root cause of the problem, I feel like it's like a doctor giving you a tablet for a symptom, but never really making you well, because they haven't found out what made you ill in the first place. So I'm all about let's find where this started. Let's find where this comes from. And that's another thing. Using the subconscious is amazing, because you don't need to guess or assume or link things together. Your subconscious stores it all, so we'll find out.
Exactly. And that's
And
what the great thing about like hypnotherapy, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. That's the beauty of
Coaching
it.
and NLP and stuff. It's like that. It's all here. It's all
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and getting and accessing that through
Mm.
those different modalities.
Mm, mm.
Yeah, is brilliant. Neuroscience is amazing, isn't it?
Oh, it's yeah.
It's like
It's just
I can just be a geek about it all day long.
and it's just, it's just expanding all the time. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, phenomenal. Yeah.
We're finding out more and more and more, aren't we, about the teenage brain as
Yeah.
well. And
Yeah.
that we think that our brain is sort of like developed and our core values and everything. I don't know about 7, but it's actually modern neuroscience has found out that that's not actually right.
No, I
Um,
mean, our prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until mid-20s, so no wonder these kids don't know what they're doing. And the
mm,
trouble is, it's all the planning, the future pacing, it's looking at consequences. Sometimes you think, what the heck did they do that for? It's because they haven't got the capability to think ahead and look at the consequences. Whereas we would do it in a second. We can see all the things that might go wrong, but they haven't got there yet.
yeah, yeah, and it is a brain development thing. But I think society expects these young people to be so like grown up. But I saw this, I love a meme, right? And I saw this meme. It's like, why are teenagers so angry? And it says because they're expected to act like adults, but they get treated like children.
Yeah,
And it's like, well, they are children,
yeah,
but they're expected to act like adults, but they don't have the brain capacity to actually make decisions for themselves and others. So there's all this scientific evidence and there's all this like medical evidence, but still our teenagers are made to fit inside these boxes. No wonder there is like a pandemic going on with teenage mental health.
mm,
Let alone the COVID pandemic. We have a pandemic of teenagers self-harming and committing suicide, which
yeah.
is where, something needs to shift.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard, senior researchers basically calling it a tsunami of mental health issues with young people, and it is.
Yeah.
It's really, it's beyond sad. It is scary right now.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, a local girl to us jumped off a bridge the other day. So it's like and I treat young girls, so many coming in with self-harming.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart. It really does.
No, it's awful.
Like,
And I think that's the difference I've noticed, because we're kind of used to suicidal thoughts, and in fact, again, that's something not to be too scared of in teenage years, because that's something that happens.
what would have you ever had struggles with your own mental health throughout the years, or did you kind of get into mental health because you mentioned your daughter?
Yeah, it's through my daughter. She was diagnosed with anxiety and depression at the age of 12. And that was when the diagnosis came. We knew there was something wrong for quite some time before that. And she's had a real struggle, and we've spent years with CAMS. I mean, poor girl. Any new therapy or anything I thought might help, I dragged her off to everywhere. And it wasn't until I discovered RTT and found someone to work with her, and she had that. It was the only thing that helped. And I was so blown away. I completely 360 on my career and trained. And now I just absolutely love what I do. And in fact, I kind of shied away from working with teenagers to start with. I think probably it was too raw. But they say that it's sort of your niche finds you, and these kids were finding me, and I just thought, oh, this is what I mean, I do work with all ages, all issues, but that's my kind of core passion, is working with the youngsters. And that's how, and that's why I'm so strong on working with the parents and supporting the parents as well, because like I said, that was me, and I know what that feels like, and I don't want anyone else to feel that lonely and that scared. Because parents can do a lot. We can empower the parents not to just hand their children over, but they can be involved, and they are important, and they can support the children. I just think you need a professional to work with the child, but you can also do a lot in support as a parent.
I'm really passionate about working with young people, and I've got a few things coming up, like next year, working with young offenders and stuff like that as well. And for me, it's like, they don't just they're not bad. They're not just born bad people, and it comes from somewhere. And like the root cause for me is really important, and really delving deep to the underlying issues. And for me, like, passionate about young people, because I was one of those young people that had mental health, that self-harm, that wanted to commit suicide, and just really didn't enjoy being me and like those underlying issues. So I know you kind of attract, don't you, what you were as a therapist.
And it goes back to being sort of be able to identify with someone and having that empathy. And I think when someone knows that you've been where they are, it just helps them, and it just what that feels like and what that looks like and what contributes to it and what helps and what doesn't. And I think it just means you can help people on a whole different level.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for coming on. And I do like to ask my guests these questions.
Okay.
So what does your inner voice say to you, Kate?
Oh, interesting. Like, I mean, inner voice is everything, isn't it? And interestingly, I thought my inner voice was absolutely fine. And when I started training, I was like, oh, it's absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with me. And then I started tuning into it, and I realized how many times my inner voice said stupid. Like, oh, you didn't set the dishwasher off. Oh, that's stupid. Or, you forgot to put petrol in the car. How stupid is that? And so, and that goes back to what we were saying about awareness, because once you become aware of something, then you can change it.
Yeah.
And now my inner voice is much more, my inner voice is telling me that I just need to reach more kids and help more people. And now my inner voice is actually my biggest cheerleader. So now it's a help, not a hindrance.
I usually ask, what's the best bit of advice you've ever been given? But I'd like you to say to any parents, young people that are going to see this, what's the best bit of advice you can give them right now?
The best bit of advice I can give is, we think that these thoughts come from somewhere. Your thoughts are yours. And if your thought is yours, you have the ability to change it. And so many people don't realize that. And that's so strong, to be able to know that you have the power within you to change these thoughts for the better, and for your thoughts to work for you rather than against you. And you can do that, and things will change. Whatever you're feeling now is not for forever. And it can change, and things can get better.
I love that. Great bit of advice. And finally, what are you most excited about right now?
Oh, I think this is going out in January, but right now I am most excited about my kids coming home for Christmas.
Yes, we'll be released.
They're off at university, so that'll be really lovely having them. But I just think 2022 is going to be a good year. I'm excited about next year. I mean, okay, we're probably still going to have coronavirus around to some degree or another, but I just think, for me personally, I think there's going to be more energy and reaching more people and just carrying on doing what I love. Yes,
I'm excited for 2022. Yeah, the energy feels good, and
I think so.
Yeah, big plans. And my motto for my mantra for 2022 is Go big or go home.
Oh,
And my
nice.
personal one, you know,
Yeah.
that won't be for everyone, but that's my personal one.
Yeah, well, good. Expansion, that's what we like.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Anybody, if you'd like to get in touch with Kate, if you have you're a parent or you are a young person that could do with some support with your mental health, please contact Kate or myself. We're both available. And I will put all of Kate's details in the show notes. You can find them there. So you've been listening to another episode of That in Voice. Join me again soon with another fantastic guest talking all about mental health. Thank you so much, Kate, for coming on.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. That was another episode of That Inner Voice. Do join me next time on the next episode. Bye for now.